Spain. It's a country defined by grand stories of empires, conquests, and unimaginable wealth. But behind the famous tales of kings and conquistadors, there's another history hiding in plain sight. It's a story of resilience, genius, and incredible business savvy that has quietly helped shape the Spanish economy for centuries. These are the stories of Spain's most significant Jewish family businesses and financial dynasties. From bankrolling monarchs in the Middle Ages to building global fashion brands today, their journey is one of survival and staggering success. Now, creating a definitive ranking of wealth across 1,000 years is impossible, but the influence of these 10 families is undeniable. So get ready for a look at 10 of the most important Jewish enterprises and financial powerhouses that left a permanent mark on Spain. You might not know all their names, but you will definitely know their impact. Section 1. The Andic family, Mango. Let's kick things off with a name that dominates high streets in cities all over the world, Mango. Behind this fast fashion giant is the incredible rags-to-riches story of the Andic family. The story doesn't start in Spain, but in Istanbul, Turkey, where Isaac Andic was born into a Sephardic Jewish family. In a twist of historical irony, the family's roots traced right back to the Spanish Jews who were forced out centuries earlier. In 1969, the Andic family moved to Barcelona, bringing an entrepreneurial fire that was about to take off. This empire wasn't born in a fancy boardroom, it started on the streets. As a teenager, Isaac and his brother Naaman began selling hand-embroidered t-shirts and cool wooden clogs they brought from Turkey. They started at local markets, then opened a few small shops in Barcelona and Madrid under the name Isaac Jeans. For more than 10 years, they learned the ins and outs of Spanish retail. The big moment came in 1984. Isaac Andic, just 28 years old, teamed up with an entrepreneur named Enrique Casi, who helped him turn his collection of shops into a single global vision. They rebranded as Mango. Andic supposedly chose the name after tasting the fruit on a trip to the Philippines. He loved how fresh and universal it sounded. That same year, the first official Mango store opened on Barcelona's glamorous Passeig de Gracia. From there, the growth was insane. While its main competitor, Zara's parent Inditex, owned most of its stores, Mango used a franchise-heavy model that let it expand internationally at lightning speed. By 1992, the brand was global, and by 2007, it opened its 1,000th store. Isaac Andic became a legend in Spanish business, not just in fashion, but finance too, becoming one of the leading individual shareholders of Banco Sabadell for a time. He was a deeply private man who rarely gave interviews, letting his success speak for itself. In 2023, the year before he passed away, Mango hit record revenues of over 3 billion euros, cementing its place as a retail giant. Isaac Andic died in a tragic hiking accident in December 2024, leaving behind an enormous legacy. Today, his son Jonathan Andic has stepped into a key leadership role, making sure this amazing story of a family that returned to Spain and conquered global fashion is just getting started. Next up is a family whose product is probably sitting in your refrigerator right now. The Carasso family, the founders of Danone, didn't just build a business, they launched a global health revolution from a tiny shop in Barcelona. The family was part of the distinguished Sephardic Jewish Carasso family from Salonika in the old Ottoman Empire, which is now Thessaloniki, Greece. They had lived there for 400 years after their ancestors were expelled from Spain in 1492. But as the Balkan Wars tore through the region in the early 20th century, the family had to move again. In 1916, a doctor named Isaac Carasso brought his family to Barcelona, returning to the land their ancestors had been forced to flee. As a doctor in his new city, Isaac noticed that many local children were suffering from intestinal problems. He was inspired by the work of Nobel laureate Elie Metchnikoff, who had studied the health benefits of yogurt. Isaac remembered that back in the Balkans, yogurt was a staple food used to treat exactly these kinds of issues. At the time, most people in Spain had never even heard of yogurt. It was considered a strange, foreign food. Seeing a medical need, Isaac decided to do something about it. He imported yogurt cultures from Bulgaria and Pasteur's Pasteur Institute. In 1919, in a small workshop in Barcelona, he started producing yogurt. But here's the brilliant part. He didn't sell it as food. He marketed it as a medicine, selling it exclusively through pharmacies in little porcelain jars that required a doctor's prescription. He named the company Danone, which was the Catalan nickname for his young son, Daniel, Danon. It was a business born from a father's love and a doctor's care. But the family was just getting started. Isaac's son, Daniel Carasso, took the business global. He moved to France, studied bacteriology, and launched the Danone brand there. When the Nazis invaded France, Daniel, being Jewish, had to flee again, this time to the United States. In 1942, he opened Danon Milk Products in the Bronx, the American version of the name. After the war, Daniel returned to Europe and steered the company's incredible growth into the food conglomerate we know today as Groupe Danone. He lived to 103, watching his family's humble medicine from Barcelona become a multi-billion-dollar empire. It's the ultimate story of resilience. For this next one, we have to step back into the 19th century to find what was arguably the most powerful Jewish banking dynasty in modern Spanish history, the Bauer family. For a while, their name was basically the Spanish word for money and power because they were the official arm of the most legendary banking family in the world, the Rothschilds. The dynasty's founder in Spain was Ignacio Salomon Bauer, a Hungarian-born Jewish banker who showed up in Madrid in the mid-1800s. He was sent by the Rothschilds to be their lead agent. The Rothschilds were wary of Spain's political instability, but they saw huge potential in the country's resources, especially the famous Almaden quicksilver mines. Bauer was their man on the ground. His connection to the Rothschild empire was sealed by marriage. James de Rothschild himself arranged for Ignacio to marry Ida Morpurgo, the daughter of the Rothschild's agent in Trieste. He bought a massive palace in Madrid, which became known as the Palacio Bauer, a flashing symbol of the family's status. Under the leadership of Ignacio and his descendants, the Casa Bauer became a financial juggernaut. It started as a Rothschild office, but eventually became its own independent bank, though it always kept those powerful connections. The family's influence went way beyond banking. They were crucial in financing Spain's industrial revolution, especially the railroads. Ignacio's grandson, also named Ignacio, sat on the board of one of the country's biggest railway companies, right alongside Spain's top aristocrats. This younger Ignacio Bauer wasn't just a banker, he was also a scholar and a central figure in reviving Jewish life in Spain. When a formal Jewish community was re-established in Madrid in 1920, after centuries of absence, Ignacio Bauer became its president, a role he held for 30 years. But the family's fortune was built on a house of cards. The Wall Street crash of 1929 sent a financial tsunami across the globe, and the Bauer empire was washed away. Within a few years, their banks went bankrupt and their network of businesses collapsed. The House of Bauer, once a symbol of incredible power, was gone. It's a dramatic rise and fall story of a dynasty that helped build modern Spain, only to be swept away by the tides of history. Now for perhaps the most controversial and secretive figure on our list, Marc Rich, the king of commodities. He wasn't a traditional family dynasty, but his personal empire was so huge and his ties to Spain so deep that he was once called the richest of the Spanish Jews. His life plays out like a spy thriller. Born Marcel David Reich in 1934 to a Jewish family in Belgium, his family fled the Nazi advance and moved to the US in 1941. He famously started in the mailroom of a commodities trading firm, but along with his colleague Pincus Green, he basically invented the modern spot oil market. He realized that oil could be traded in real time like any other commodity, creating a revolutionary and massively profitable new market. In the 1960s, Rich worked for his firm in Spain, setting up their Madrid offices and falling in love with the country. Eventually, he struck out on his own, forming Marc Rich & Co. The company grew at a wild pace, trading not just oil but all kinds of raw materials. Rich was a master of the high-risk deal, often trading with nations under embargo, which earned him billions of dollars and a reputation as a ruthless, shadowy operator. His fortune was so vast that Forbes magazine reportedly had trouble even calculating it. But in the 1980s, his world turned upside down. He was indicted in the US on dozens of charges, including massive tax evasion and making illegal oil deals with Iran during the hostage crisis. Facing what would have been a long prison sentence, Rich fled and became one of the most wanted fugitives in the world. During his exile, his connection to Spain became his lifeline. He was granted Spanish citizenship and lived in a luxurious villa in Marbella, becoming a fixture on the Costa del Sol's high society scene. Even as a fugitive, he continued to run his global empire, which eventually became the company we know today as Glencore, one of the largest commodity and mining companies on Earth. Marc Rich received a famously controversial presidential pardon from Bill Clinton on his last day in office in 2001. He passed away in 2013, a true legend in international finance. His story wasn't about building a public brand, but about mastering the secret currents of the global economy from his base in Spain. Now we need to go way back to the 16th century, a time of chaos and opportunity right after the 1492 expulsion. This is the story of a family that didn't just survive, they built one of the biggest private commercial empires in Europe. And at the center of it all was one of the most powerful women you've probably never heard of, Gracia Mendes Nasi. The Mendes Benveniste family was one of the wealthiest Jewish families in Spain. When faced with the expulsion decree, they chose exile and fled to Portugal. But just a few years later, Portugal also forced its Jews to convert. So, to survive, the family became new Christians or conversos, practicing Judaism in secret while living as Catholics. The family's business genius thrived. The eldest son, Francisco Mendes, built a massive trading empire based in Lisbon and Antwerp, dealing in the incredibly lucrative spice trade. His private trading network was so powerful, it was said his profits were bigger than the entire national assets of Portugal. Francisco married his niece, Beatriz de Luna, who came from another powerful exiled Jewish family. Her Hebrew name was Gracia Nasi. When Francisco died young, he left his entire fortune and control of the business not to his male partners, but to his wife, Gracia. This was unheard of. And Gracia was more than ready. She was a brilliant and fearless businesswoman. From her base in Antwerp, she expanded the family empire. But her work had a secret second purpose. She used her incredible wealth and fleet of ships to run a sophisticated underground railroad, helping hundreds of other conversos escape the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal. She would get them passage on her ships, give them money, and help them resettle in the Ottoman Empire, where they could live openly as Jews again. Her actions made her a hero to her people and a target for the rulers of Europe who constantly tried to seize her fortune. She was always on the move, a master of international finance and politics, protecting her family and her people. Gracia Nasi was, without a doubt, one of the wealthiest and most powerful businesswomen of the 16th century. Section 6. The Abravanel Family. Halfway through, we land on a story that is both the peak of Jewish influence in medieval Spain and its most tragic end. The Abravanel family, especially its most famous member, Isaac Abravanel, stood at the absolute center of power. The Abravanels were one of the oldest and most respected Jewish families in Spain. By the 15th century, Don Isaac Abravanel was one of the most powerful men in the entire Iberian Peninsula. He first served as the treasurer to the King of Portugal, financing the kingdom's early explorations. But after a political betrayal, he had to flee to Spain, leaving his fortune behind. His reputation got him a new job almost immediately, this time working for the most famous monarchs in Spanish history, Queen Isabella I of Castile and King Ferdinand II of Aragon. For years, Isaac Abravanel was a key financier to the Catholic monarchs. He managed the royal finances and provided massive loans that were essential for funding their biggest project, the war to conquer Granada, the last Muslim kingdom in Spain. He was at the heart of the court, a trusted and indispensable advisor. But in 1492, the same year Granada finally fell, his world fell apart. Isabella and Ferdinand signed the Alhambra Decree. All Jews in Spain had to either convert to Catholicism or leave the country forever. For Abravanel, this was a stunning betrayal. He had served the crown faithfully and bankrolled their greatest victory. He personally begged the queen to reverse the edict, even offering a fortune to stop it. But the decision was final. Faced with an impossible choice, Isaac Abravanel, one of the most powerful Jews in Spain, chose exile. He refused to convert. In doing so, he gave up his immense wealth and property for the second time in his life, leaving with his family to Italy. His story is one of ultimate loyalty, not to a king who would betray him, but to his faith and his people, even if it cost him everything. So, what happened if you were just as powerful as Abravanel, but chose a different path? That brings us to Abraham Sr., who held a position of power that might have been even greater than Abravanel's. He was the chief tax farmer and top financial advisor to Queen Isabella, and his story shows the agonizing compromises some families made to survive. For decades, Abraham Sr. was the financial engine of the Kingdom of Castile. As the Rab de la Corte, or court rabbi, he was the head of all Jewish communities and their main liaison to the crown. More importantly, he was the kingdom's chief tax collector. He ran a massive network that kept the royal treasury full, making him absolutely essential to Queen Isabella. Along with Isaac Abravanel, Abraham Sr. was a key financier of the Granada War. He was so powerful, he had a hand in everything from state policy to arranging royal marriages. He was a Jewish man at the absolute peak of Spanish society. This is what makes the events of 1492 so dramatic. When the Edict of Expulsion was announced, Abraham Sr., then in his 80s, was trapped. He had served the crown his whole life. Spain was the only home he had ever known. Like Abravanel, he fought the edict at first. But when it was clear there was no changing the monarch's minds, he made a choice that would define his legacy. Unlike Abravanel, Abraham Sr. chose to stay. On June 15, 1492, in a huge public ceremony, Abraham Sr. and his family were baptized as Catholics. The king and queen themselves served as their godparents. Abraham Sr. became Ferran Perez Coronel, and his family was instantly transformed from Spain's leading Jewish family into a powerful new Christian noble family. His decision was a shock. To some, it was a terrible betrayal. To others, it was a pragmatic choice to save his family. The new Coronel family stayed incredibly wealthy and powerful, but their identity was changed forever. A gut-wrenching choice at the end of an era. Section 8. The Family de la Cavalleria. Here, we have a family that represents yet another path to survival and power in medieval Spain, the Cavalleria family. For centuries, this powerful clan from the Kingdom of Aragon thrived as conversos, Jews who had converted to Christianity, building one of the most important financial dynasties in the region. The family was originally a prominent Jewish family in Saragossa, but after a wave of horrific anti-Jewish riots swept across Spain in 1391, many of them made the difficult decision to convert to save their lives and property. But they didn't just disappear into Christian society. As new Christians, they were suddenly free from the restrictions placed on Jews. They could hold public office, join powerful guilds, and dive into political life. And they did it with incredible success. For the next century, the Cavalleria name was everywhere in the financial heart of the Kingdom of Aragon. Family members served as the kingdom's chief financial officers, managing the royal treasury and acting as personal bankers to the kings. They formed a powerful clan, intermarrying with other influential converso families. But their Jewish origins were never forgotten, and their success made them a target. They were constantly suspected by old Christians who questioned how sincere their faith really was. That suspicion boiled over when the Spanish Inquisition was established, designed specifically to hunt down conversos who might be practicing Judaism in secret. Several members of the Cavalleria family were put on trial. The family's story shows the complicated and dangerous reality of being a converso. They rose to the highest levels of power, yet lived under a constant shadow, their success tied to a religious identity they had been forced to leave behind. Section 9. The Nagid family. Imagine a Jewish spice merchant becoming the prime minister and top general of a Muslim kingdom. Sounds like fiction, right? Well, it happened in 11th century Al-Andalus, or Muslim Spain. This was the golden age for Jewish culture in Spain, and no family reached greater heights of power than the family of Shmuel ha-Nagid, or Samuel the Nagid. Shmuel ha-Nagid was born in Cordoba in 993. He started out as a simple shopkeeper. When a civil war broke out, he had to flee, eventually setting up a new shop in Malaga. As the story goes, his life changed forever because of his incredible handwriting. The servant of the vizier, or prime minister of Granada, started asking the learned Jewish shopkeeper next door to write her letters for her. The vizier was so blown away by the elegance and intelligence of the letters that he tracked down their author. Recognizing Shmuel's genius, he brought him into the royal court. From there, his rise was meteoric. He went from tax collector to assistant vizier, and when the vizier died, the king of Granada appointed Shmuel as his new grand vizier. A Jewish man was now the de facto ruler of a Muslim kingdom, commanding its armies and managing its finances. He was also given the title Nagid, or prince, making him the head of the entire Jewish community. Shmuel ha-Nagid was a true Renaissance man. He was a brilliant statesman and a skilled general who personally led the armies of Granada into battle. At the same time, he was one of the greatest Hebrew poets of all time and a towering scholar. He even established a dynasty. When he died, his son, Joseph ha-Nagid, inherited his job as vizier. But their incredible success created powerful enemies. Resentment grew among some in the Muslim population against a Jewish family holding so much power. In 1066, a mob stormed the royal palace and Joseph ha-Nagid was assassinated. The tragic end of the Nagid dynasty was a brutal reminder of how fragile even the greatest power could be. But their story remains one of the most spectacular examples of Jewish achievement in history. And that brings us to number 1. To find the man who arguably lit the fuse for Spain's entire Jewish golden age, we have to go back to the 10th century and the magnificent court of Cordoba. Here, one man, Hasdai ibn Shaprut, created the blueprint for the Jewish courtier, statesman, and patron that would define the era. Born around 915, Hasdai came from a wealthy family and received an incredible education, becoming fluent in Hebrew, Arabic, and Latin. He trained as a physician, and his skill was so great that it caught the attention of the Caliph of Cordoba, Abd al-Rahman III, one of the most powerful rulers in the world. The Caliph quickly realized Hasdai's genius went far beyond medicine and made him a chief advisor. In reality, Hasdai became the Caliph's foreign minister, handling the most sensitive negotiations with Christian kings, the Holy Roman Emperor, and ambassadors from the Byzantine Empire. Hasdai used his immense power and wealth to become the greatest patron of Jewish culture of his time. He basically created the conditions for the Golden Age to happen. He sponsored poets, philosophers, and scholars, inviting them from all over the world to Cordoba and turning the city into the undisputed center of the Jewish intellectual world. As the Nasi, or prince of the Spanish Jewish community, he used his high position to protect and promote his people. Hasdai ibn Shaprut established the archetype. He showed that it was possible for a Jew to rise to the highest levels of power in a Muslim court while also leading and protecting his own community. He wasn't a king, but he lived like one. And his political and cultural patronage created a legacy that would last for centuries, allowing figures like Shmuel ha-Nagid to thrive. For that reason, the legacy of Hasdai ibn Shaprut and his family stands as the #1 most influential Jewish dynasty in the history of Spain. So, from the courts of medieval caliphs to the boardrooms of modern multinationals, the stories of these 10 families paint an incredible picture of resilience, brilliance, and lasting influence. We saw how figures like Hasdai ibn Shaprut and Shmuel Nagid built dynasties of power and culture during the Golden Age. We witnessed the heart-wrenching choices faced by the Abravanels and the seniors at the moment of expulsion, and the unbelievable post-exile empire built by Gracia and Nasi. We followed the Rothschild agents, the Bauers, who helped finance a new industrial Spain, and saw how the Sephardic diaspora came full circle with families like the Carassos of Danone and the Andics of Mengo, who returned to build global empires. Their collective journey is a vital, often hidden part of Spain's history. It's a story of huge contributions and staggering success, often against impossible odds. If you enjoyed this journey through business and history, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Which one of these family stories blew you away the most? Drop a comment below and let us know. Thanks for watching.